Okay, my friends, this is very encouraging. I didn't realize that there was so much about mud fossils on the internet, and a lot of people writing about it. Now, this is my book. This is the first book that was written. I wrote that book 7 or 8 years ago, and in response, mine is called Mudfossils, Velikovsky, Minds in Collision. The minds of the academics cannot accept this truth and this reality. And I see everybody else is writing about the same things. And they're writing about Velikovsky, here's one, Mudfossils, Velikovsky, so forth. So they're starting to see these things. They're starting to understand these things. There's Phil Harris's heart. This was Phil Harris went out. I put out a 15-minute challenge. I said, if you can't find mud fossils in 15 minutes, I'll eat my goose, Caesar. And every single person came back. This guy went out, Phil Harris, he went out, he saw this rock. He saw this little red spot. He hit it with a hammer, cracked right. This is a heart. There's the red blood. There's the other side, and this is the in-between blood. I'm really surprised. Holy smokes, they're all over the place. My name's in here a lot. And, you know, of course, I started the whole thing with when I discovered these mud fossils. And most of these are pictures I did. Here's somebody else. I don't know who this is, wrote this. Titans, Giants, Roger Spur, Petrified. This is not mine either, but my name's on here. There's me again. So this is good. This is very, very good. It's very encouraging. Very encouraging. People are starting to see this, and they're starting to understand what our real, true history is. Because this Michael Tellinger, I did a story with him just recently. I did an interview with him just recently. He's a good guy. He understands the truth of the nature, and he's able to speak about it. The problem is, if you're in the academic arena, you're forbidden from saying anything about this. I had a guy yesterday told me that he went, you know, he's a geologist or something, and he asked if anybody had known about any of the work I was doing. That's all. It was just a question. They immediately blocked him, called him a troll, don't ever come back here, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I know that whole story for 12 years now, at least. So now let's see what all of this is about. That's all. Let's just examine it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, well, it's right. Okay, what I need to do is explain the difference between mud fossils and mud floods. Well, mud floods obviously are a flood. A fossil is a fossil. Well, mud floods create mud fossils, absolutely. However, what my mud fossils are from the Great Flood, and they are from salt water, hot. The only time this has ever happened, well, the only time I know of, is in 1500 BC. We were almost hit by Venus, which was ejected from Jupiter. All this was recorded throughout history. Every culture had the same story. Velikovsky recorded it. So if you doubt it, look up Velikovsky. He has the actual documentation that shows that this actually did happen. And the Earth was almost destroyed. And at that time, everything basically was wiped off the face of the planet. Although there was existing people that lived through this, that went way high up in the mountains into caves and so forth, and they survived this intense heat interaction and heavy-duty flooding, boiling waters. And that's why all the mud fossils that I find are complete organs and so forth. Mud floods will create complete bodies. All right? The organs will not be disassociated from the bodies. That is the difference. Good morning, my outstanding friends. It's Roger once again, Mud Fossil University, and today we're going to clear up a few issues that have been not understood correctly. If you're a geologist, or you want to be a geologist, or you have any interest in rocks at all, you have to watch this, because this explains where all these rocks came from. They're not just laying there in these patterns for no reason whatsoever. I am going to explain to you precisely, starting from clay all the way up to calcium carbonates and what's in between them. These are what rocks are made of. So before we do that, I want to start with something else first. All right, this is a little gross, but it's true. When body parts, flesh and so forth, are exposed and they rot, they turn into rotten meat and everything rots. Well, why is the mud fossils different? Why are my mud fossils different? And why are the mud flood victims different? Here's why. They were encapsulated in clay. That is the key. Clay is flesh. So they didn't really change much at all. They just became encapsulated in more flesh that surrounded them. So as they petrified, they took on what's called nucleophilic substitution, and the waters washing through them replaced the minerals in them and made them stable. And that's why they are complete bodies from mud floods. Mud fossils, different. Mud fossils was a process of boiling away all the clays, which are the meat. All right, remember I told you the 15-minute challenge? Tish Egerton, I think she's in Missouri, went out and in 15 minutes found all kinds of, wait till you see the rest of the stuff. And these are new species. I have them as well. I thought I was the only one that had these no-toes, but they're all over. People are finding them everywhere. And the toes were built into them, and they have springs inside rather than bones. I don't know. I'll show you. All right, check this out. This is obviously the one I just showed you. That's mine. This is what's inside of them. You see the bone here, the heel bone? You see it? And then you see this flat strap here coming up. And there's a saddle up here. That saddle has a bone sitting in it. All right, that's your leg bone, comes down to here. That strap comes up and would attach to that leg bone, just like it does here. But in front, we have springs, and it's a double spring system. I figured out how it works. Very, very cool. This has tendons and bones. These do not. And this is one that's eroded from her. Tish found a ton of these things. She's got them all over the place. And she just pick them right off the ground. 15 minutes. I'm not kidding you. I swear that's the truth. All right, when I say disassociated from the body, here it is right there. There's a lung. It's absolutely 100% perfect. And you see the back is flat as a pancake. All of my stuff is like that because this got boiled out of the guy's body. The rest of the body boiled off like it was cooked. And once in the salt water, collagens, this is another thing we have to go through, is all of the spectral properties of clays and mud and rock and marl and all that stuff. And we're going to do that in a second. But collagen in hot water, salty water conditions of this flood bonded, the collagens bonded with aluminum silicates, and it created basically a rubber bag around all of these things. All of these things are coated. Even Caesar is coated with collagen. Feathers are collagen. Right? Normally, things love to eat feathers. I'm not kidding you. That's why the Green Mountains are green, because they're feathers. I know this is just over the top crazy, but it's true. You want to see why the Green Mountains are green? I'll show you. All right, this is the east coast of the United States. This is Florida. If you search on the Green Mountains, they show way back up here. But I'm going to show you down here the same thing as here, because the Green Mountains are growing green because of the feathers. Feathers they use feather meal to grow things extremely green. And they also use blood meal. All right, and they also make bone meal. Bone meal makes plants flower, makes really nice big flowers. Blood meal makes them grow really fast and greener than green, deep greening. The same thing with feathers. Now, you see the analysis here? 1200, nitrogen is 12%. Now let's see what feathers are. Now don't forget, I'm going to, before we go to the feathers, well, hold on a second. Let me just wipe this down clean so that you can see this. It's away from my doodles, and I'll focus in on the feathers and the green. Okay, I've shown this many times, but Quetzalcoatl, you can look it up. He's got these feathers sticking straight up off his head, and he's just a gigantic feathered serpent. Now, I'm wiping off all the stuff I had on here. All right, now, don't forget, these are the green mountains up here. Now follow his head around here. You can see, there's his head. I'm going to show you the feathers sticking straight up. This is Little Rock, Arkansas. This color is because it's a different chemistry than the runoff of the blood and so forth that makes things fairly green. The real green is where you have the feathers, and I'll show you that in a second. So this is all his body, and it runs this curve all the way up. Remember I showed you how it ran up? Now, these are going to be the feathers. I'll show you this, and like, follow this up. You see that? You can see that little pattern going all the way up there, all the way up to the Green Mountains. This is absolutely enormous, but it's just here. Now, this is the best spot to see the feathers. Green Mountains is fine. It's green. It's very green, and it's mountains. But this was the spot you want to see, because then you can see it very easy. This is feathers. The feathers. I know feathers quite well. I love feathers. And you see how green it is? You see around them? Not quite so green. Why are they so green? Well, I can tell you why. Because that is feather meal on the hoof. All right, you know what that means? It hasn't degraded yet. It's the biology is just thriving on feathers. Just as it does if you were to buy this stuff. Okay, as you know, I don't do half a story. I do the whole story. And here's the whole story. Feather meal, they sell it. It's excellent fertilizer. 1200. Well, why is that different than this 1200, which is blood meal? All right, they both do deep greening, and they say, yes, oh yeah, and well, you just saw it. They do make things green as hell. Now let's go deeper into this, because that is the chemistry. Now let's talk about the chemistry. Most people don't understand what this means. They're showing three different chemical groups here: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So that's the nitrogen, then you got phosphorus, and then you got potassium. They're saying that this is all completely nitrogen, the blood and the feather meal. Now, then there's other ones that say they're 0, so they don't have any nitrogen. They have 10, which is phosphorus, and no potassium. It means it contains phosphorus but no nitrogen or potassium. So that's what, those different chemicals make things grow better. Well, why? Why? Why does nitrogen make things grow faster? Is it eating the nitrogen? I said, no, that can't possibly be eating the nitrogen. It's eating the blood. Well, how does it eat the blood? It uses the nitrogen to eat the blood. You know, when they talk about rabbit holes, they're not kidding. Listen to this. Nitrogen, which we're feeding it nitrogen. Nitrogen is part of the chlorophyll molecule. Well, chlorophyll, you know what that is. That's what makes things green. Chlorophyll is the green part. It gives plants their green color and is involved in creating food. Well, how is it involved in creating food? Why does that happen? I can tell you exactly why that happens, is because that green molecule absorbs light and turns it through photosynthesis. It absorbs photons of light. Synthesis means it sucks them in and uses them. That's what the green does. Without the green, you can't get the electrons, which is the photons. Without the photons, you have no growth. Photons, light is life. Light, let there be light, means let there be life. You understand me? And that's no fact. Everything there is made of photons, which is made of protons. I'm sorry, photons are made of electrons, and electrons are made of two parts, a black and a white, and I've shown that many times, and it's called the neutrinos, muon and electron neutrinos. So we're going all the way from green hills down to atomic physics, but that's how it absorbs the electrons. Okay, if you've been around long enough, you know my claim is that there is nothing but biology, and the earth was made of giant creatures. That's what they said in the ancient texts, and it appears to be true. These are connective tissue lines. And this is also muscles. You see this? This is not an accident, these separations here. These little lines. Those are what ends up coming out here. You don't really see them, but they're in there. Now, this is the layers of tissue, and every one of these crazy looking layers is a membrane that separates this color from this color, which is whatever it is from whatever it is, whatever they are. Now, this whole thing is just being eroded away and exposing all of this biology. Now, I have a friend, Tyson Carlson, who has a channel, Tyson's Mudfossil Adventures. And he's a researcher. I've been working with him for several years, and he's got us. He's on the west coast of the United States. This is the east coast of continental, America. This is Canada, Nova Scotia. The other side of the dirt is the west coast, Oregon. That's where Tyson is. So anyway, and he's got some absolutely fabulous shots. He goes right on the site and he looks, because he knows basically what he's looking for. This is very, very hard to understand. Very, very few people have any idea what they're looking at when they look at this. All they see is these crazy patterns, and then they listen to a geologist say, oh yeah, that was uplift from da-da-da-da-da-da, and they come up with so many different theories, and they think this took hundreds of millions of years to collect. This was one creature fell over dead. So to me, that's not hundreds of millions of years. That's like, case closed. We got some new, landscape. Okay, Matt T sent me this to take a look into this Joggins Cliffs, and they have all kinds of, they show everything. But something I want to point out is whenever they show in all these different little organisms and things they found, even huge sharks and things they think they found, I want to see the matrix of where they found it. Let's say they found it right in there, and it was literally part of that layer. It would have been living in the blood vessel of this creature, because this is only the size of a membrane. In us, you see through that. Tyson has stuff that's 6 feet thick, shows the bottom membrane to the top membrane, 6 feet thick. So anything could be living in there that's 6 feet tall, drifting around in there having a good time. And then when they died, they became part of that layer. Don't forget, that's the size of this creature. Just think of the size, everybody, all these caves and everything that are down through here, that they've always wondered, wow, look at these crazy caves and all of these formations that are forming. Those are blood vessels and different organ systems that have evacuated. And look at the size of the damn thing. Just think of what could be living in a creature like that. And I believe that the parasites and the different things that were living in them, and the ticks and so forth, that were the size of city blocks. And when they died, they had to go find something to eat. They went into the oceans and they started eating all of the people that were in the ships and so forth. That's when they found all those sea monsters, and then they killed them off, and now they're pretty much gone. But they would have had to go somewhere to eat. Everything makes sense if you think about it logically, but in a most incredible way. I mean, it is incredible. I can't say it isn't. It's just, and the average mind should not even think about this unless this evidence existed, and it does exist. Here it is right here. Here's the dragon's beard coming off. You see that? That's the beard. All right. Here's his head, Quetzalcoatl's head, coming up out of here is his feathers. The same thing, green feathers. You see it up here? Feathers. The green loves those feathers. You see that? That's a feather pattern. I've looked at this very, very, very carefully. Now look at this. Look at the outline of his body. Look at this river structure here. Look at that. What the hell is going on there? And it's just, well, there's more of it up here too. And there's more over here, and there's more over here. But that's in his body, is all of that little squiggly looking line, rivers and so forth, you know, little river. Look at that, all the way around his nose and everything. And his throat is the same thing. See, this is his throat going here. And it's got that same looking squiggly stuff. And you see, look for the difference in color. That'll tell you when transitions are. Transitions are where bodily tissue changes. This was his throat. This was the bodily tissue. That's the transition zone. And if you follow it right up, here's his throat going up straight through that transition zone. You see it? And he spits something out. It looks to me like he spits something out here into the Gulf. Right here. Now, did that come out of him? I have no idea. But it almost looks like some kind of whale or something. I don't know. His mouth, I don't know. I have no idea. At this point, it's a free-for-all. People are finding all kinds of things, but you got to find the details. I'm a detail guy. If I don't have details, and I can't explain it with the chemistry, the biology, the anatomy, the history, it's all got to come together, and it does. Now it comes together absolutely flawlessly. Okay, this is running a little long, so I think I'm going to cut it short, but I'm going to tell you what we're going to do on the next installment here. Now, what we have to do is understand the difference between all of these different types of stone. And clay is at the very bottom end, and calcium carbonates are at the very top end. This is all mud fossil stuff, but everything is, geology is. You start with mud. And that's the slippery, slimy mud, the very fine mud. I can explain that. And then you get into the slightly scruffy mud. And then you get into really hard, scruffy mud. And then you get into stony muds. And then you get into, by the time you're up at the top, you get into your limestone, which is basically tendons. We're going to go through all this. I'm going to show you examples of it. We're going to show you chemistry. I have them all here right in front of you. I can show you everything. But it's going to take some time. So if you're interested in knowing really the deep details, then you're going to have to come back. And that'll be in the next release. All right, this is going to be really fun. Keratins are proteins in biological tissue. Usually they think about them being part of healing wounds and injuries, but they're also in the really tough skins. Collagen, a little different. It's the extracellular matrix in your body, your skin, your tissue, and all that stuff. It's the membranes. And what do we got here? And marlstone is in the middle, and then limestone is your tendons. And you just start going back through some of my videos, and I will explain all kinds of stuff. Then we're going to get into the tessellated things and all of the stuff that they can't explain. They just have names for, and at this point it's meaningless. It didn't take millions and millions of years to form these formations. They were part of a creature. All right, the things we will be explaining is the skin, all the different types of skin, because there's coarse skin and there's fine skin, and then you come down into the interstitial, which is all the gooey collagens and so forth, and all these fluid-filled spaces, and then these anchor balls, which right here, you see this? Look at this carefully. That's the mucosa, which is skin or the membrane, and below that is the stretchy stuff that lets you float around in there. This is, you see this right here? This is blown up over here. It was that same spot. Now we can see the balls that are all here. You would never see those without the microscope. And then you can see how they're invested into the tissues. That is this stuff right here. Well, guess what? So is this. You see that? There's that white skin layer. This is the interstitial layer, which is the gooey part so you can stretch around. These are the balls that held things in place. Once they eroded away, they just fell down, just like these did over here in Utah. That's in Utah. And these are the same thing, only they're a little smaller. And all of that above stuff has just washed away as mud. All right, so this is serious, and there's a lot to know about it, and it's not understood. And these same features are not on this earth as well. They're also in other places, and I'm showing that very clearly as well. I don't make guesses. There's no guesses here. If you think I'm wrong, I want you to show me where I'm wrong, and I want some geologists to engage with me and discuss with me. And I think I think I've earned that. All right, this is my living universe theory. All right, the universe is literally alive, or is alive, and some of it's dying, just like Earth. We need to talk about geology. Totally different than what I was told. Anthropology, totally different. Archaeology, totally different. Biology, significant differences. History, completely different. Chemistry, basically completely different because of dipole flood theory, which shows that protons are made of little tiny particles. They're not made of one big gigantic plus. They're made out of a batch of these. And they have just shown that these can be distorted, these protons. So they're not just one big ball. And to put them in a magnetic field, you can stretch them and you can do all kinds of things. And this is brand new stuff. But it's not being discussed because it changes what somebody else said who is now in charge. So we need discussion. We need Zoom meetings. We need debate with a moderator, back and forth. Here's what I say. What do you say? Well, here's what you said. Here's what I say against what you said. Back and forth. That's science. That's interaction. That's what we need. Living universe theory is now, as far as I'm considered, proven. And so is dipole electron flood theory, basically proven. We've shown it with the light experiments. So until somebody will contact me and we can have some discussion openly in a large format so that it gets to about a people. I have a very small following, and it's a very closed group. And I've been excluded, and they are being excluded as they bring it forward too, a lot of them. So we need to have some open discussion. All right. Now, the next couple of episodes are going to be completely on the chemistry, the formation, how these things happen, what is said in history, what a hot water flood does versus a cold water flood, which is the mud flood versus mudfossils. We got a lot of work to do. So stick around. Okay, just in case you don't know who Quetzalcoatl was, we saw him on the globe, and here he is eating a giant. Now, just think of how big the creature would have to be for him to be putting them in his mouth like that. I can't explain any of this. I can't explain any of this at all. But I can tell you, these are his feathers, and this is his beard, and there's everything was there. Everything, 100%.